and also on the YouTube channel of Brazil's federal government. I would like to welcome you all, both remote and in person participants. This event has language sign interpreters, Isaac, Yatsa, and Danilo, and feel free to take pictures of this talk. Please share it on social media and make sure to tag us with hashtag CriaG20, hashtag Festival G20, hashtag G20 Social, and that's it. This is the third and last day of G20 Social as part of a special agenda. Cria G20 is going to focus on the connection between communicators, content creators, solution creators with the Future Invention Center. This is an initiative for us to discuss effective actions to drive the change that the world needs. Since the motto of Brazil at G20 is building a fair world and a sustainable planet, in its current term, Brazil seeks to ensure an immersion in the reality of our time, trying to make local demands connect with global challenges. G20 Social is a warm up for the G20 meeting, which is happening between 18 and 19 of November here in Rio de Janeiro, with 19 member countries plus the EU and the African Union. The objective is to ratify the agreements negotiated throughout the year and discuss potential solutions to the problems that impact us. Here at Cria G20, we are talking to social activists, content creators, students, artists, people from Brazil and from abroad are exchanging ideas and experiences through podcasts, workshops, sessions, cultural presentations, and it's a win-win for everyone as long as you're willing to learn and to teach. Here at Armazém 1A, at Peer Space, we've been guiding the G20 meetings based on three tracks. Our first day focused on the Global Alliance Against Poverty and Hunger. On the second day, the guiding topic was the new financial architecture of the world, and today we're going to talk about the fight against climate change, a most pressing and alarming matter. According to the World Meteorological Organization, for us to lower the average temperature of the planet, we have to reduce gas emissions into the atmosphere by 43%. According to the UN, however, our efforts are falling short of expectations. So, considering all the commitments made by countries, we would only achieve 3% of this percentage of this goal in 5 years. So, this topic is unavoidable. The climate crisis is there. The climate is changing and it's changing fast. Serial extreme events show that. It's clear that we're falling short of that. We are already late. Data is alarming, and in the panel we're going to start in a few seconds. We're going to discuss what can be done to mitigate the effects of climate change. The evidence is there, and global warming is at the core of this discussion. 2023 was the hottest year ever recorded in 174 years of measurement. Brazil broke all records. The deforestation of, and specifically thinking about Brazil, the destruction or the deforestation of the Amazon is a threat to the biodiversity of our planet, and it also expedites global warming. The commitment of the Brazilian government with the fight against climate change and a fair energy transition can be translated into numbers. Between August 2023 and July 2024, deforestation in the Amazon decreased by 30.6%, reaching its lowest level in 9 years. Over the same period, deforestation in the Cerrado decreased 18%, first reduction in 5 years, first decrease in 5 years. I would like to remind you all here in person with us that there is simultaneous translation for this panel. Two of our speakers today will speak English, so if you need help with the translation, please get your headset in the beginning, at the entrance of the room. There will be translation into English and Spanish, channel 1 for English, channel 2 for Spanish, and if you have any questions, just ask the technicians. Without further ado, I will welcome to the stage our guests. I will start with her. She's an activist for climate justice. She's also a model, a speaker. She was born in Hong Kong. She currently lives in Bristol, UK, and her work is focused on advocating that climate policies and actions are cross sectional, inclusive, and transformative. She is a writer and author of the book It's Not Just You, which addresses a highly relevant topic eco anxiety, an urgent mental health crisis. So, come on up to the stage, Tori Tsui. Welcome, welcome, and thank you for joining us. And now I will invite him, an indigenous leader with fundamental contributions for this discussion. Born in the Pataxó village in Bahia, this 24-year-old young man uses social media in his fight for the rights of indigenous peoples. He is the communication director of the Pataxó Indigenous Association. He's a content creator with hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, and he's a great cook, a chef of cuisine. Tucumã Pataxó, welcome, welcome, thank you. And now she raised her voice at a very young age. She was just 7 years old. How amazing is that? Her motivation was to fight climate change. Ever since then, she has taken every opportunity to challenge international leaders, especially from wealthy countries. Please join me in welcoming this 13-year-old environmental activist. Come on up, Lisipria Kangujam. Did I pronounce your name right?
Years old, not 7.
Sorry. Vocês entenderam, né, pessoal?
You got that right, guys.
Muito obrigado pela presença.
Thank you all for joining us today. It's an honor to have you here on the stage. I will use the translation myself. So this is a great session with such prominent names, but before we actually start, let me self-describe myself. We're going to describe our physical characteristics because this helps make the conversation more inclusive. So I'm a white male, 1.93 meters tall. I'm wearing a black shirt, black pants, black shoes. I wear glasses, and they say I look like Clark Kent. I hope I do. Is that true? I am 43 years old, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Really, I'm very honored. And now I will ask you to self-describe yourselves. Tucumã, you go first. Good morning, everyone. I'm an indigenous male, 1.70 meters tall. I'd rather think I'm 170. I might be a little less, but I like to believe I'm 170. I'm wearing a headpiece with blue feathers, a sweatshirt with indigenous print, black pants, black shoes, and I'm wearing green earrings. They're beautiful. They're made by your people, right? Yes. I think that's it. Tori, over to you. Please describe yourself.
Everybody, my name is Tori Choi. I am wearing a grey two-piece suit, waistcoat and trousers. I'm a mixed race person. I'm partly Cantonese, Macanese, so Portuguese as well, and also English and Welsh. And I have short brown hair with a little fringe, and I'm wearing some gold jewelry.
Agora, por favor, Licípria, sua autodescrição pra gente.
Lisipia, please describe yourself.
Hi everyone, Kuramjari Namaste. My name is Lissy Priya Kangujam. I am 13 years old, Indian climate activist and the founder of the Child Movement. I am the special envoy for the President of the Republic of Timor-Leste, and I'm happy to share with you all that I'm the youngest special envoy in the history to work officially in a government. So right now, what I'm wearing here is nacho. You guys must be interested in knowing what it is. So in my tradition, in my culture of community, I belong to the tribal community called Meitei from India, from Manipur. So this is called nachom. So it signifies a woman. When a person wears nachom on its left side, it says that the girl, the woman is unmarried. And when they wear it, on their right side, it signifies that that woman is married. So that's our tradition, our culture, to recognize a woman. And what I'm wearing is our traditional clothes called fanek. And with my feet, with the clothes. Thank you.
It's a beautiful, lindo.
Lovely. It's lovely. Beautiful.
Perguntando para todos os nossos.
So, to start, I would like to start, I have a first question, and I'll quote Pope Francis. Pope Francis once said, if we measure the temperature of the planet, we'll say that the planet has fever. The planet is sick with fever like everyone else. So, but do we hear that pain? Those who most suffer with the consequences of this disaster are the poor people who are displaced, people who are displaced by floods, droughts, extreme heat. So, to face the climate crisis caused by man, we have to commit to the fight against poverty, and we have to protect nature. That was the quote by Pope Francis. So, on that note, considering the increase in temperatures and the repeated episodes of droughts, floods, storms, extreme heat, as we've seen recently in the south of Brazil and the recent floods in Spain. And my question is, do you think we still have the time to change things? Can we still change things and ensure a better future for everyone? Lissy, over to you, please.
I'll just remove my headphones. We have to do this because I don't know how to speak Portuguese, just English. Yeah. So, yes, I believe so that we have time to change because you see, climate change problem is like not only for me or for you or for someone else. Climate change problem is for every single person living in this world. Each and every child living in this country, living in this world, is already the victims of today's global climate crisis. And I believe that every child can lead the change. There is no value of our expensive art, luxurious car, beautiful homes on a dead planet. That's what I want to say. So we have to take the urgent, immediate climate action now.
Eu vou aproveitar esse gancho antes de vocês dois responderem. O que você diria para as crianças e pessoas?
What would you tell? I'm going to repeat the question. What would you tell the children and the people who are not committed to this cause? How can we engage more people in this cause?
So I have three main demands. It would take up a lot of time to say all of those three main demands. So climate education is one of them. I'm asking, our governments to include climate education as a mandatory subject in our school education curriculum, so that we could fight the climate crisis from a very young age, from the grassroots level. Because, climate crisis is happening even right now in the reality, and it's not fake. That's what we all know. But the thing is, children are having the lack of environment consciousness about the climate change. And moreover, they don't know what to do, what steps to take. So climate education plays a very major role, crucial role in fighting climate change from the grassroots level. Yeah.
Obrigado.
Yeah, indeed, that's fundamental. That's true. Tori, what do you think? Do we still have time to change?
I don't want to sugarcoat my answer. I think we need to accept that change is coming, whether we like it or not. This year was the first year that we've surpassed 1.5 degrees of warming, which was a vital benchmark set out by the Paris Agreement. And even at 1.5 degrees of warming, we're seeing catastrophic climate impacts. I think to say that we've run out of time is not true. We definitely have capacity to change the course that we're on, which is currently on track for 3 degrees of warming. This is a death sentence. 3 degrees of warming does not ensure a habitable future for anybody. But because of the level of warming that we're currently on, we are seeing changes happen. But every degree matters. Every fraction of a degree matters. And so while we have to prepare for changes that are going to inevitably happen, we can stave off the worst of it if we make sure that we commit to rigorous climate action now.
Yes, and this change has to happen faster because change is happening too slow. I think it's too slow. It should be faster. Now, Tukuma, what do you think? Do we still have time to change? I think so, yes. We still have time to change, but it's important for people to understand what's happening, really, like she said. But I think that to change things for real, people here and people out there have to understand the importance of discussing climate change. Again, like she said, education is key. We're here, we know it. We're here because we know the importance of this topic, but people out there don't. The other day I took a taxi here, and the taxi driver didn't know anything about that. People don't even know what's going on here. And how can I tell the taxi driver, oh, this car that you're driving unfortunately contributes to the global warming? Like Rio is hotter than ever and rainier than ever. So how can I tell him that an electric vehicle is better if it's unaffordable? If it's not affordable for him, it's too expensive. He cannot buy an electric vehicle. It's too expensive for him. So I think we have to raise awareness and we have to engage everyone. We have to communicate the message to everyone. We can change things, but our time is very limited. Time is short. So again, it's urgent. It's urgent that we do something about it. Okay. Lissy, can I call you Lissy? You're considered one of the youngest, if not the youngest, climate activist in the world, and you're known for not holding back. You have access to global leaders, you call for urgent action, and you ask leaders to listen to the children. When did you realize that you could be such a powerful voice in the search for solutions for such serious problems?
Thank you very much for the question. I was born in a small northeastern state of India called Manipur. It's full of lush green mountains, alluring atmosphere with full of rich biodiversity hotspots. But now, most of those biodiversity hotspots have turned into climate hotspots now. Any which ways, I grew up in Bhubaneswar, Odisha for my schooling reasons. And my life was hit by Cyclone Titli in 2018 and Cyclone Fani in 2019. And during those cyclones, when I was a toddler, when I was a kid, I saw in front of my very own 2 eyes how children suffered, how many people, innocent people, lost their lives. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't even take my food, I couldn't even drink my water. That's how it impacted my life. And thoughts started coming up like, why is it happening? Who is responsible for this? And how can I stop it? Later, I moved to New Delhi in 2019, the capital of India. And then again, I faced the extreme heat wave crisis and the high air pollution level. So facing all these environmental issues in such a young life, in such a young age, it turned me into a child climate activist. That's my story. And also, When I started my journey, many people pointed it out that you should study, go do your homework. Why aren't you in school? Why are you protesting? Why are you speaking in these conferences, in these meetings, in these events? You're a kid. Let the adults do their job. But if the adults, if the leaders actually did something, would I have gone out, come out in streets, come to these kinds of events, conferences, No, I would have enjoyed my beautiful childhood life. But they didn't. So what I'm trying to say is that age doesn't matter to make a difference. I'm big or small, it doesn't matter. I'm a girl child who strongly believes that every child can lead the change.
Você
So you obviously would prefer like to be enjoying like your childhood. So due to the fact that adults are not taking their responsibilities, right? So Tukumam. So you are a bit connected digital guy, you use the social media like to bring information to your people. So I want to know from you, so how this too could help like mitigate like the climate change?
Eu comecei na internet em 2014.
I began on the internet in 2014 talking about prejudice and everything that we have to face, especially when we leave the community. Because unfortunately, we have to go through a lot of prejudice when we are in the cities. And then I began talking about that. So I became engaged with all the like the environmental issues more recently, like 4 years approximately, along with the indigenous movement when I became more connected to the indigenous movement. And internet, I say that it doesn't have like a borderline. So we have to occupy these spaces because when we post something on the internet, we are posting to the whole world so the whole world can follow. And it brings an opportunity for the indigenous youth and for the indigenous people to show our reality from our own eyes, what we are facing in our territories and our land. And now we are like the rivers in the Amazon usually go through a drought period, but it's much worse than normal. And people who live in the community do not understand why the rivers are getting so dry. They who live in the communities, but sometimes they do not have like internet, they do not have television, they do not understand what's going on. So in our land, and I come from a place that is in the state of Bahia, like in Coroa Vermelha, like very close to the coast, like the Discovery Coast, the coast that we call the invasion. And we suffer the climate change. And I follow that. And my grandmother used to say that we had climate issues. Well, it's the time for the rain season, but now it isn't to rain so much as it is raining right now. So this opportunity to use internet as a tool like for our struggle. So people say, well, it's a indigenous influencer. What do we do? So we use our power like to show what is going on, our visibility, to show how we are currently living in our land and outside of that land. And this is extremely important for us. So to be an influencer is precisely that. It's not only to say, well, buy this piece of cloth or no. I have to say this is happening in our land, in another piece of land. Look at us. Look at what's going on. Help us. Because it's not only our struggle. It's a collective struggle. Tori, so you act in campaigns against fossil fuels. Why do you think that this impacts like climate changes?
The elephant in the room, which is the fossil fuel industry. I've spent the last half a decade campaigning against the fossil fuel industry, their lies, their deception, the way that they bribe our governments. And we need to address the fact that 86% of all carbon emissions from the past decade has come from coal, oil, and gas. Yet the Paris Agreement, which many nations have signed on to, the UNFCCC agreement to stave off the worst of climate change by limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees of warming does not even mention coal, oil, and gas. And that is a really, really big issue. And I don't want to skirt around the fact that, to me and many others who really truly understand the implications of fossil fuels, they are weapons of mass destruction. They are killing communities, especially those most marginalized. They're polluting our waterways. They are responsible for destroying biodiverse regions. I know that there's interest in Brazil to go into the Amazon to look for oil and gas. And that is an affront to climate justice. And what's even more terrifying is that G20 nations are historically and currently the most responsible for fossil fuel production. And just over the last few years, we have seen 142 billion US dollars be funneled in to fossil fuel projects by G20 nations. And these are the same nations that have committed to 1.5 degrees of warming in the Paris Agreement. It is complete and utter hypocrisy. And I know that so often as a climate activist, I'm invited to spaces to talk about hope and to talk about the need to mobilize together. And by all means, I definitely feel that. But unless we hold our governments to account and call out the main perpetrators who are driving us off a cliff edge, we are not going to live on a habitable planet. I cannot reiterate this enough. We are going to fail to survive if we do not rapidly transition away from fossil fuels. And there are frameworks out there that allow for us to ensure this just transition. I work with a phenomenal organization called the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, and they are a complementary agreement to the Paris Agreement in that they are here to stop the expansion of coal, oil, and gas. And they're also here to ensure a just transition to make sure that nobody is left behind. Because Paris alone, while it was a huge victory to have Paris signed in 2015, we need something else to ensure that fossil fuels do not continue to expand. And I think without that framework, without a fossil fuel treaty, we're really going to struggle to stay within 1.5 degrees warming. And we're seeing that, as I've mentioned, this year is the first year that we have surpassed 1.5. And there are people who are dying already. So it's not a pleasant topic to speak about, but it's a necessary one. And I think that the time for being very sort of, I guess, hopeful and sugarcoating all of this type of rhetoric is over. We really need to start having hard conversations, and fossil fuels have got to go.
O que eu acho assustador.
So what I think it's frightening, Tori, is that if we have like a museum for the automobiles that I visited in the US, and the electric cars are there like for more than 100 years. So look at the lobby, like the power of the fossil industry hiding technology for so long, and 100 years later, we still do not have the necessary incentives for this kind of a fair transition, like energy transition. It's frightening. Now, I have a question for all of you. So the term like environmental racism became more popular after the declaration of our Ministry of the Social Justice, Aniele Franco, but I want to call attention for that because there's still a lot of misinformation and resistance that relates the effects of climate imbalance to social and economic injustice. So what are the most effective measures each one of you are observing, like to mitigate environmental racism? So who would like to take the lead?
You can all remember, maybe you all might remember the incident which happened in 2021 I would like to mention the name of Sister Vanessa Nakate, where the Associated Press, cropped out her photo from the group photo with the white people because it went viral in the social media that she was a black person. And then later what happened was the Associated Press, apologized. And then again, the crop photo of her, they again put it back. So it was one of the most sad back, of the Associated Press in the history. Yeah, it was something that they shouldn't have done. Well, what I would like to say was the incident of a whitewash climate movement. That's what I would like to call it. And even when I started my movement, many of the Western media, they call me the Greta Thunberg of India, which I absolutely don't like. Yeah. Thank you. So what I would like to say is that I have my own story, my own identity. Why call me the Greta of India? Please call me the Lysipriya Kangujam of India. I mean, you see, these Western media, these media people, are not writing a story. They're deleting a story. These media people are like Greta Thunberg of Nigeria, Greta Thunberg of other countries, of other countries. So this is absolutely not fair. So this kind of whitewash climate movement should be removed at all cost. Yeah, and that's what I would like to say.
Obrigado.
Thank you.
It's really interesting because over the last few years, I've spoken a lot about environmental racism, and you often get people saying, well, how can the environment be racist? And it just goes to show that there is such a fundamental lack of understanding about what environmental racism actually entails. It understands that the impacts of environmental degradation and the climate crisis disproportionately impact communities of color, specifically black and brown communities from low-income economies. And one thing that I'd like to highlight, again, I've spoken a lot about fossil fuels, is that a really clear example of environmental racism taking place is when black and brown communities are located in what we call sacrifice zones. So they're regions where fossil fuel infrastructure and polluting infrastructure is built. And these are the people who are predisposed to getting types of cancers, respiratory illnesses, and they are not ever given the adequate resources to either relocate or to deal with these issues. And so to take on the fossil fuel industry is also an issue of taking on some of the health inequalities of the world. And a lot of my advocacy over the last few years has focused on making sure that black and brown communities are represented in spaces of power. We had spoken earlier about Unite for Climate Action, which is a project that I worked on with some phenomenal Latin American and Caribbean activists, where we made sure that black and brown individuals from the Global South were represented in UNFCCC spaces, because unfortunately, those who are most marginalized in society are very rarely actually allowed into spaces where key decisions are being made over their livelihoods. And this year at the COP29 in Azerbaijan, we have more fossil fuel lobbyists than people from the 10 poorest economies in the world present at these negotiations. If that doesn't show you that the system is broken, then I don't know what else will. And so for me, tackling environmental racism is a huge part of tackling the climate crisis, a huge part of taking on the fossil fuel industry. And there are many thinkers over the years who have said incredible words of how nobody is free until everyone is free. We have to understand that if you advocate for the most marginalized people in society, everybody benefits. Every single person benefits. And so my sort of plea to world leaders would be to stand for climate justice, which is to understand that those who are most impacted by the climate crisis are the ones who cause the least amount of harm, but are also the people who hold the solutions.
Tucumã.
Tucumã.
É muito bom esse papo, né? Então, voltando um pouco, né, sobre... comentando um pouco, né, sobre o que eu ouvi agora, a gente chama...
So we call this media. It's like hunting, because like talking to another indigenous activist. So Greta, indigenous, like indigenous Greta, like talking, say no. I have my own identity. I'm Satira Mawea, and I'm fighting against the climate change. So why compare me to somebody else? So because people are like hunting, you know. But this is unfortunately what happens. I'm part of the community and the articulation of the indigenous people in Brazil. I'm one of the articulators. It's a collegiate communication effort. And we have like Patashaw, we have like Sandra, we have other people. We're part indigenous people from 3 different groups, and we are part of this communication effort that brings meaning for the issue. And we look at things that are happening in the indigenous communities, not only like hunting for likes on the social media. And talking about environmental racism, I've taken some notes here. It's kind of complex. People do not understand what environmental racism is. So for us to talk about, we have to explain a little what it's all about. So this is what we currently live in our country. So people that are more vulnerable are suffering the consequences, and also like the choices and everything that other people choose for them, and that they usually do, and from other countries and big companies are doing with our planet. So we are suffering like from floods and droughts and like extreme heat. So this is environmental racism. Everything that we are suffering in the cities, people do not understand how to solve these problems, how to deal with these problems, if there is any way for us like to live with it, because some people are already dying from these bad choices that big companies and big countries are making. And where are we going to get? So we do have a very short period of time. There is a point of no return. We are fighting, so we won't get there. But it's a collective struggle. It's something that we all must look and understand to reach a point where, well, we won't get to this point of no return, actually. So actually, I got a little bit lost here, but let me get back. So we still have some time left. So
But that was basically it. We have to understand that environmental racism is part of our everyday lives. It's there. Our country is proof of that. In Brazil, there's no denying that everyone, or the most vulnerable populations, the poor, traditional communities, those in sacrificial zones, sacrifice zones, are the ones who suffer the most. And of course, wealthy countries are suffering less, rich people are suffering less. The rich are polluting the world, and the poor are paying the price. An issue that impacts the population with climate change is the lack of food security, especially for the poor, for the most vulnerable populations. So, what solutions do you think can help tackle hunger and famine in the world? We know that the climate crisis will worsen famine and hunger, droughts, floods. We saw recent floods damaging the fields, agriculture. So, what do you think can be solutions to the problem of hunger and food insecurity worldwide?
Tori?
Yeah. I think far too often there is a focus that there isn't enough food to go around. That's not true. We have enough food, it's just not being distributed equally in society. And I think that being in Brazil, we can't not talk about the impacts of the animal agricultural industry, where I think it's 80% of the world's soy crop is fed to cattle. That's such a highly inefficient method of growing crops when that could be fed to human beings. And soy is a complete protein. It's very nutritious. It's something that could easily be fed to humans. And so animal agriculture has to be tackled. And I think that the world has become too reliant on eating meat and animal products. We need to transition to a more plant-based food system, and we also need to scale up technologies that allow for people to access adequate protein sources. So I would say that that's one of the solutions. But as I mentioned, a lot of it also has to do with the fact that the climate crisis is impacting the quality of our crops and the output and production of our crops. And so we do need to transition to a renewable energy system, because the more we are hooked on dirty, polluting fossil fuels, the more instability we will have in our food systems.
A Tori falou uma.
Tori, that was so interesting because indeed, a lot of the grain produced in the world is used for animal feed. China is doing something interesting in that sense because they use the stems, the trunks of banana trees. They grind that and they use that to feed animals. It's because cows are vegetarians, right? Already. Lissy, anything about that?
What I would like to say is that I just want to say this clearly, that we all are living in a world which feeds war, not the children. Instead of spending billions of dollars on wars, if we spend it on ending hunger, ending poverty, giving education, and fighting climate change, then what a wonderful place our earth would be. We have trillions of dollars for wars, but we do not even have $1 billion to fight the global climate crisis, which target our life and health of your children and grandchildren. This is very shameful. This is not fair.
Perfeita.
Awesome. Perfect. Tukuma, over to you. Yes, that's absolutely true. I second what the ladies said. Many countries say they don't have the funds, they don't have the resources, the money to invest in initiatives to stop climate change. But everyone has, but they always find the money for war, for warfare. So that's a great point. Why spend so much money on warfare and not on more productive, more interesting initiatives to stop or mitigate climate change? So yes, there's money to end hunger in the world. There's enough food for everyone, like she said, and it's not only in Brazil, it's a global thing, it's a global problem. But yes, there's food for everyone, but there are still people starving. Why is that? We also have to talk about more sustainable farming practices, a more equitable distribution of food. We also have to educate our children on nutrition, better eating habits. Even drinking water is still a challenge in some places. We couldn't even solve the problem of giving everyone drinking water. We know the solutions. The solutions are there. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy. If it was easy, it would have been done already. It's not easy, but we can do it. You know, I think governments should listen to communities. They should listen to the people. If you talk to the communities, they will tell you what they need. It can't be a top-down thing coming from the government to the people. You have to talk to the people who are in need and ask them what they want. It can't be decided by the politicians in fancy offices in the big cities. No, you have to go to the communities and talk to the people. You have to, what do you need in this place, right? I think it's impossible, it's important. For example, the Yanomami people in the border between Brazil and Venezuela, they are struggling with famine, with hunger, diseases. They're victims of illegal miners. They're starving because their land has been invaded by illegal miners, drug dealers or drug traffickers. So illegal, the rivers are polluted. Exactly, so illegal mining of gold. So people are there killing the Yanomami community because of gold. And they're, so, it's a terrible situation really up there. So let me ask you, this ring I'm wearing is not really gold. It's fake gold. It's not really gold, but it's golden. But I stopped wearing gold. I like gold. Of course, everyone likes gold. But when I think about gold today, I think about illegal mining in indigenous land. So it's gold, but it's bathed in blood. It's blood gold. So I think it's beautiful, but I cannot use gold anymore because gold for me is associated with the suffering of the Yanomami people and so many other indigenous people. So I don't wear gold and because of that. I associate gold with violence. Amazing, and I think it's important to say that. In, but in Brazil, we're already seeing some people producing food differently. Agroforestry, or yes, much better for the farmers. It produces 7 or 8 times more food than cash crops, monoculture, like plantations that were brought by the Europeans to Brazil. In Brazil, we have vast regions of the country producing sugarcane only or soybeans only. But when you mix different species of plants, first you need to use less pesticide. Nature is so wise that when you plant different species of plants together, they communicate and they help each other. So you have fewer problems with pests and diseases. You need fewer pesticides, herbicides. So there are new farming methods, there are new food production systems that are very interesting. Of course, commercial agribusiness isn't encouraged by the government, but some people are already producing food in a smarter way. Yes, and we can also learn that from the traditional peoples, from the indigenous peoples. I traveled to the border between Brazil and Colombia recently, and there, the indigenous peoples there have been growing their food like that for centuries. You don't have to deforest the Amazon to grow food there. You can grow food under the canopy of the trees, and they produce amazing food there. The quality is outstanding. So why don't we just do that? Why do we have to cut down the trees? Exactly. Brazil should be a big. Before the Europeans arrived, Brazil was a huge agroforest, right? So we still have a lot to learn from our own indigenous peoples. Guys, unfortunately, we are running out of time. I'm also loving it. I'm going to open for Q&A. The first lady is telling us to open for Q&A. So, guys, this was amazing. This was a great conversation, but we're really running out of time. So, a final message, a final takeaway, one final message for everyone, and then if we have time, we'll open for questions. But one final message. Lissy, what is your final takeaway, your final message for those who are watching us?
What I would like to say is that my generation is already the victims of today's global climate crisis. And I don't want my future generations to face the same consequences again because of your inaction and empty false promises. If there is no nature, then there will be no food. If there is no nature, then there will be no growth. If there is no nature, then there will be no security. And if there's no nature, then there will be no future for us. Act now. We will fight until we achieve our goals. We are unstoppable, another world is possible, and change is possible. And also, what I would like to add one thing is that a new climate war has started. You see, in my community, Manipur, we are facing a communal violence between the two tribal communities, Meiteis and Kukis. I am very disappointed to share news to all of you that in my birthplace, Manipur, an entire family of 10, including 3 minor children and 2 men, were kidnapped as hostages and killed by the Kuki narco-terrorists in the climate war going on in the Manipur. So these people were held hostages, and the 2 men, they were burned alive. And the children, the minor children, those 2 women, they were all found dead yesterday floating in the river. The child's head, the woman's head, they were all raped, they were all brutally tortured, they were brutally murdered, and their heads were smashed by bricks. So what I would like to say is that justice for Meitei, justice for Manipur, no more deforestation. I would like to say to all the G20 nations to make deforestation as an international crime. And also, today's global climate crisis is caused by the rich nations, and we are just the victims of it. Rich nations must pay now for the loss and damage funds caused by the climate crisis to the global south. There will be no climate justice without the climate finance. We deserve climate justice now. We deserve climate justice now.
Tori, por favor.
Climate justice understands that those who have contributed the least to the climate crisis are the ones who will be suffering the greatest impacts. But it is also an intersectional framework that understands that every single societal injustice contributes to climate change and will be exacerbated by climate change. So whether that is racial inequality, gender injustice, and more. And I really appreciate what you were saying about militarism and war, because for me there is no climate justice while G20 nations continue to pour in trillions of dollars into a genocide that is happening in Palestine as we speak. Climate justice means a free Palestine. It means freedom for all oppressed people everywhere. It means that the money that we are funneling into these conflicts, into these wars, into these genocides could be funding a just transition away from polluting fossil fuels. I said before, fossil fuels are weapons of mass destruction, and I'm asking each and every single one of you in this room with the connections and the influence that you have to put an end to this madness. Because this affects all of us. And so often, we're invited to speak up on these stages. Many of us have gone to countless conferences again and again and again, saying the same things with little action being done. And it has to stop, quite frankly. This trajectory that we're going down, it has to stop. And we have to stop being invited to things where we say the same thing every time and things don't change. And so please, with what influence you have in this room, hold your world leaders to account. Advocate for climate justice, because we cannot do this alone. Far too often, we are spearheaded as these sorts of leaders within movements, but movements are made up of ordinary people. We're really just the mouthpieces for what is essentially a collective struggle. And so I just ask that we all do our part, but make sure that we understand who is most responsible. Because it is not us, it is the wealthy, it is world leaders, and it is the industries that are driving us off a cliff edge.
Menos discurso e mais ação.
Less talk and more action. Less talking, more acting. That was great. Thank you. Tukuma, over to you. Yes, indigenous peoples are experiencing a lot of pain. We fight for climate change. We were fighting against climate change much before this was a hot topic. People call me an activist. Well, but I believe that Mother Nature is our big mother. It's our greater mother because Mother Nature gives us food, water, air to breathe. So we've been activists for much longer. Our elders were already activists. They didn't know they were activists, but they were activists already. We are a people of activists, and we are being killed for that. The indigenous peoples are being killed for that. Many relatives of mine, even in the Pataxó land, we're suffering pressure from farmers, ranchers, the destruction of the forest. We need our lands to be respected. We need our territories, our land to be respected. We need demarcation of our land, because that will also help fight climate change, because the indigenous peoples will not deforest the jungle. The most protected areas of Brazil are in the hands of the indigenous people. So if we want to protect the land, we can leave the indigenous in charge. We're fighting for that, and we will fight until our last breath.
Temos tempo para perguntas.
Do we have time for questions? At least two questions, please. This is so interesting. I'm loving this session. Any questions from our audience? Just be so kind. What's your name? Luciana. Hello. Good morning. My name is Luciana. First, I would like to congratulate you. This is a very important topic. Thank you very much. You said that we often come to this type of conference and we say the same things and we hear the same things. Ever since I started coming to this type of event, my impression is that we always meet the same people. I always see the same faces, the same people, the same messages. You keep saying the same things. So it's even tiring. It can be tiring. So, what can you tell us about that? You've been working on this for quite some time. So, how do you pop the bubble? How do you burst the bubble and convey this message outside this conference? Because, again, it's a bubble. It's always the same people talking about the same things. So, how do you spread the word? What do you do? What do you do to spread the word? What do you do to let more people know about this? How do you use your voice to hold authorities accountable? Because you said that we have to hold our leaders accountable. Right, but how do you do that? So how do you spread the word outside events like this, and how do you hold your leaders accountable? Who wants to get this one?
I'll start. I really like what you were saying about making sure that you talk to communities and you talk to everyday people. It's really important to actually talk to people who are living the reality of these issues that we speak about. One thing that I am trying to do more is put myself in spaces where people don't agree with me. And that can be tiring because I've been in spaces with climate change deniers before, and that can be an uphill battle trying to argue with someone who doesn't even think that carbon dioxide is warming our planet. But I recently came from a tech conference, and the tech industry is responsible for 3.5% of global carbon emissions, and that's projected to increase. Most people in the room had absolutely no interest in the climate conversation. I wasn't particularly enthralled about going to a tech conference, but I knew that if I went there, I would be able to have conversations with people who they don't think about this kind of stuff, even though their industries are really responsible for human rights abuses and climbing carbon emissions. So from a personal perspective, that's what I try to do, to put myself into uncomfortable spaces and conversations where I don't usually interact with these types of people.
Perfeito. Lice.
Yeah, what I would like to say is that, I mean, as a child, you guys are listening to us speaking, and you said yourself that you're getting tired, by hearing all this again and again. But you see, we're doing this for a reason. We're saying this again and again because, you see, the leaders aren't taking the action. We have to repeatedly, say this again and again to achieve our goal, because, as I said, we are unstoppable. Otherwise, if they had, taken all the actions and everything, we would have changed to another topic, because it's a vast topic. It comes all under one umbrella, right? That's what we would have done, but, we have no other option left. The activists and everything, so yeah, that's what we're doing. And one thing that I would like to say is that, see, many people are listening to us, getting the message, getting the awareness about climate change and what they can do. So, but they know, they get the information into their heads, into their minds. But one thing is left, is taking the action. The action. So my message is that, the first step to saving our planet is to change our behavior. Yeah.
Rapidinho já para encerrar.
Just quick, because we are about to finish now. So I create content for the internet. So how can I say? The funniest way, I do not want to be very formal, because I know that this is how people will understand and engage. So also like follow me, like the articulation of indigenous people in Brazil, so you can follow us, what we are posting, like in the indigenous land and outside. So this is it. My final takeaway message is like we do not we are not going to save the planet. We are going to change this mind frame that we are not the heroes. The planet will continue with all the cockroaches that will survive and all the microorganisms, but the climate change will eliminate the humankind from this paradise, which is the Earth, if we do not act now. So we must save humanity because the planet will continue and nature will restore itself and regenerate as it has never seen before, as it has seen actually, like when the indigenous people all over the world were the native inhabitants. So let's change this mind frame of like saving the planet. We have to save ourselves. So I felt honored, like to mediate this panel, but unfortunately we have to end it. And beyond the dialogue, we must act. It's our attitudes that will make a difference. So only with our attitudes we will change like the pathway, so we can move towards a better future for the humankind. We do not have like a plan B or planet B, so let's stop looking for Mars. So everything is beautiful here. We have the perfect conditions for the humankind. I would like to thank our guests who brought a lot of brightness for this conversation with your important opinions and very touching. So thank you everyone here and people following us online. I would like to remind you that we have special episodes, our CriaCast, dedicated to the priority topics in Brazil and also the content of the G20 Talks, like this one that we've participated, are being broadcast using the YouTube channels, G20 and the Brazilian government. And for those here, we have many different activities and workshops related to like the creation of like series for the internet and financing for bioeconomy and social housing, and also like the empowerment of communities and much more. So here on stage we'll have at 1:30 p.m. one G20 related to misinformation, and then a CriaCast special addressing the youth and also talking about black issues, only urgent topics. And at night after 6 p.m. we get together at the music festival. So bye everyone, thank you all very much for being here.
Pessoal, vou pedir para todos vocês ficarem em pé, que estão aqui assistindo com a gente, para a gente fazer uma foto com a plateia. É isso, Dimas?
Uma diferença.